To understand Columbus's journey, we first need to imagine the world of the late 15th century. Europe was hungry for trade, especially spices, gold, and silk from Asia. These luxuries flowed through complex trade routes controlled by powerful empires. The Ottomans dominated the overland routes, and Venice and Genoa controlled much of the Mediterranean trade. But for kingdoms like Spain and Portugal, there was a desperate desire to find new direct routes to Asia. The Portuguese had begun exploring along the coast of Africa, hoping to round the continent and reach India. Christopher Columbus, an Italian sailor from Genoa, had a different idea. He believed that by sailing west across the Atlantic, he could reach Asia faster. The problem? Almost nobody agreed with him. Columbus was not the first to suspect the Earth was round. Educated Europeans already knew this. But what made him unique was his calculation. He believed Asia was much closer to Europe than it really was. He estimated the distance across the Atlantic to be only a few thousand miles, when in reality it was more than 3 times that distance. Most scholars dismissed him. They argued his voyage would be impossible. He would run out of supplies long before reaching land. But Columbus was persistent. He spent years presenting his idea to various courts across Europe, including Portugal, England, and Spain. Each time, he was rejected. Finally, in 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, flushed with victory after expelling the last Muslim kingdom from Granada, agreed to support him. Their goal? Expand Spanish influence and wealth, and spread Christianity. On August 3, 1492, Columbus set sail from Palos de la Frontera with 3 ships. The Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa. His crew numbered about 90 men. For weeks, they crossed uncharted waters. The sailors grew restless and fearful. Many worried they would never return home. Food supplies began to dwindle, and tensions rose. On October 9, Columbus promised his men that if they did not find land within 3 days, they would turn back. Just 2 days later, in the early morning hours of October 12, land was sighted. A lookout on the Pinta spotted an island. They had reached the Bahamas. Columbus believed he had reached islands off the coast of Asia. In truth, he had arrived in the Caribbean. The people he encountered were an indigenous people who lived across the islands. They welcomed the Europeans with gifts, food, and hospitality. Columbus, however, saw them as subjects to be converted and potential sources of labor. In his diary, he wrote, "They would make fine servants. They are intelligent and would easily be converted to Christianity." This was the beginning of a relationship that would soon turn tragic for the native peoples. Columbus's first voyage was not just about discovery, it was about wealth. He searched for gold constantly, convinced that Asia's riches must be nearby. On the island of Hispaniola today, divided between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Columbus established the first European settlement in the Americas. But tragedy struck on Christmas Day 1492, when the Santa ran aground and was destroyed. Columbus used its timbers to build a small fort called La Navidad, which he left behind with a garrison of 39 men. In January 1493, he returned to Spain with news of his discovery. His arrival caused a sensation. To many Europeans, it seemed as if he had found a new world filled with endless riches. Columbus would make 3 more voyages to the Americas. On his second voyage, in 1493, he brought 17 ships and over 1,000 men. His mission was clear: colonization. Settlers established towns, planted crops, and began the extraction of resources. But the relationship with the quickly turned violent. The settlers demanded food and gold, and when it was not provided, they used force. Disease, violence, and forced labor devastated the indigenous population. Within decades, the people would be nearly wiped out. On his third voyage, Columbus reached the mainland of South America for the first time. Yet, by now, criticism was growing. Spanish settlers accused him of mismanagement and brutality. By 1500, Columbus was arrested and brought back to Spain in chains. Although he was eventually freed, his reputation had suffered. Determined to restore his legacy, Columbus embarked on a fourth voyage in 1502. This time, he explored parts of Central America, including modern-day Honduras, Nicaragua, and Panama. But storms, shipwrecks, and hostility from both the Spanish settlers and indigenous groups plagued his journey. After years of hardship, he returned to Spain in 1504. Columbus died in 1506. Still believing he had reached islands near Asia, he never realized the true magnitude of his discovery, that he had opened the way for Europe's exploration and conquest of an entirely new continent. The voyages of Columbus changed the world forever. They marked the beginning of the so-called Age of Exploration, when European powers would race to colonize vast new territories. For Europe, it meant immense wealth, the spread of Christianity, and the creation of vast empires. For the indigenous peoples of the Americas, however, it marked the beginning of centuries of suffering, disease, forced labor, slavery, and conquest. Historians estimate that within a century of Columbus's first voyage, up to 90% of the native population of the Caribbean had perished. Today, Columbus remains one of the most controversial figures in history. In some places, he is remembered as a brave explorer who connected two worlds. In others, he is condemned as a symbol of colonization, exploitation, and a destruction of indigenous cultures. His voyages cannot be separated from the consequences they unleashed. The exchange of plants, animals, people, and diseases, known as the Columbian Exchange, reshaped the globe. Potatoes, maize, and tomatoes traveled from the Americas to Europe, while horses, wheat, and smallpox traveled the other way. It was a turning point in human history. When Christopher Columbus set sail in 1492, he believed he was on a simple mission: to reach Asia by going west. Instead, he stumbled upon lands unknown to Europe, sparking an age of exploration, conquest, and global transformation. His story is not just one of discovery, but of ambition, miscalculation, and consequences that echo through history. More than 500 years later, the legacy of Columbus continues to shape how we understand exploration, empire, and the meeting of worlds. This was the story of Christopher Columbus and the discovery of America. Want to see more historical stories? Don't forget to subscribe.